Welcome back to Round 5 coverage here at the Liberty Garden Midseason Showdown and Kings games in Brooklyn, New York. Joe Brown and Brendan Lewis going to have this action for you. This is going to be fun. James Bake, who's a prominent player, not just in this region, but known nationally and internationally.
And on YouTube.
And on YouTube, that's right, versus Vincent Montalvo, who's another local player who in 2015 top cut the Lancaster regional, so that's his biggest accomplishment. And if he goes 5-0 right now and beats James Beck, I would say that's another accomplishment.
Yeah, being in top cut, I think 5-0 would put you just like not definitely in, but like pretty
secure,
pretty close. Yeah. Barring some sort of like
you'd have a play roughs chance
some resistance-based catastrophe, but I think otherwise like pretty solid. But yeah, both strong players from the area, as you were saying with James having regional top cuts all over the place, and I believe he's day 2'd in international or nationals, or he's there. He's up there. He's a really good player. One of the best players in the country, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've seen a lot of Mimikyu today.
Yeah, a surprising amount of Mimikyu. And I think I was just talking to you about that just a second ago. I was like, looking through PGL stats, Mimikyu's not in the top 30 of PGL stats.
That's crazy.
And
he's so the synergy with Snorlax Mimikyu, I don't understand how people aren't running it.
Right, yeah, and it's still an incredibly strong Pokemon. It's a safe Trick Room. And then on the flip side here, I was just talking to Zach Carlson, Professor Shroomish on Twitter, who is here doing stats for us. Mimikyu is on 20% of teams here, but isn't in the top 30 on the PGL.
Well, that's because our Liberty Garden region players, they know what's good.
They know. There's always a strong regional meta here, and I think we'll definitely see Mimikyu go up in usage after this tournament as other people try and pick it up from outside the region.
I think that's pretty accurate, because we remember at the beginning of VGC 2017, there really wasn't a lot of Mimikyu or Snorlax around. People hadn't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
And then a lot of early on regionals and Premier Challenges, like we
had
one
and here
early
in particular,
with Mimilax, where a lot of players were running it, and it really opened the eyes. Not saying that was the sole reason,
right,
but it really made people think about Mimikyu's potential as a supportive and attacking Pokemon.
Right. So I think almost in both formats, it would be maybe a little bit, but not too much of a stretch to say that Mimikyu, Kings Games, is the birthplace of competitive Mimikyu.
Mimikyu is a Liberty Garden product.
Mimikyu. Here we are.
So let's get into it. We have another fairy on Vincent's team, though, being that Gardevoir, which is we haven't really seen too often compared to many of the other megas in this early format. Mm-hmm. So Vincent has Gardevoir, Zapdos, Landorus, Tapu Fini, Incineroar, and Ferrothorn, as James Bake has the Politoed, Ludicolo, Gothitelle, Mawile, Tapu Koko, and Incineroar, which we saw earlier on stream. Could be different moves and items and investments, but the same 6 that Justin Karras was running in round 1.
Right, in the same 6, and we did see how strong that is. There are a lot of different 3 or 4 Pokemon combinations that you can really change that team around and use a Trick Room option that has Politoed, so you're protecting Mawile. You've got Incineroar, which supports Tapu Koko extremely well with the Fire and Ice and the Fire and Electric and the Fake Out, and then the Rain mode, and then the Gothitelle, so you can lock in Intimidates and lock in your own weather. So there's a lot of different pieces that fit together in very interesting ways. And then on the other side of the screen here, we see a different fairy, like you mentioned, which is Gardevoir, which was incredibly popular at certain times during the 2015 format. It was first and second at U.S. Nationals, and
it won 2014. Right? It was a Choice Scarf Gardevoir, right?
Oh, was it? Yeah, the non-mega version. Yep, correct.
So it has a lot of potential. We would assume because Vincent doesn't have any other megas on, potentially that is his mega for this format.
Yep.
But of course we don't know yet.
And of course it didn't really pick up steam as a mega Pokemon in open dex formats until it received Hyper Voice, which it didn't have in the 2014 format. And then it got the opportunity to, be setting Trick Room. It can use Icy Wind. It has strong psychic attacks, and it can use Spread Fairy moves, which is pretty awesome.
So let's get into game 1. Vincent Montalvo, James Bake, round 5. Both players are 4-0 right now. Vincent has Landorus and Incineroar, and James leads with Politoed, Ludicolo.
Right, and the first thing that jumps out to me here is that this is definitely a little bit of a questionable lead to go into Rain. He's led 2 water-weak Pokemon when James has a very obvious, strong rain mode. So Vincent's going to have to do some maneuvering here to avoid taking like a Hydro Vortex or a strong Hydro Pump or something like that.
James switches out his Politoed into Gothitelle, who has that Shadow Tag ability. So now Vince's Pokemon are not able to switch out while Gothitelle is in there, and they kind of just trade the fake outs there. So nothing. The only real big difference is now Vincent can't switch out, and both of his Pokemon are really scared of Ludicolo.
Yeah, that's a great play by James. And now he has locked these 2 water-weak Pokemon into a room with a Ludicolo who's going to dish out some huge damage. And Landorus and Incineroar are both Pokemon that are frequently found not running Protect, so it's entirely possible that James just has his choice of knockout here on turn 2.
He can go for the Scald or the Ice Beam. Either way, he's really going to do he's going to potentially knock or one-hit knockout either of Vincent's Pokemon. Mawile switching in on this turn, so that will be an Intimidate for both of Vincent's attackers here. It is not Mega Evolve,
there
though.
is a Protect.
So it's not an Assault Vest Incineroar, which is very common here in the early formats. It has Protect. Obviously, it is running a different item. But Ludicolo, this is his new adventure into the 7th generation Hydro Vortex.
Right, and in 2015, we used to see it run almost exclusively with the Assault Vest item. And James here is going to target into the Protect of that Incineroar, but it's still going to do a decent amount of damage there through the Protect. And now we're going to see Landorus get an opportunity to U-turn out, which is the one way that teams can use to break out of the Shadow Tag.
Landorus with that U-turn brings Ludicolo down to almost being knocked out there. But next turn, Incineroar, if it can switch now since Gothitelle's not in, but if it does stay in, that Scald or any water type attack from Ludicolo will probably knock it out. It is interesting. Or maybe James didn't know Incineroar wasn't Assault Vest, and that's why he went for the Hydro Vortex, because now that he has that information, he knows he doesn't need to spend his Z move in order to knock out the Incineroar.
Right, so now he knows he can knock it out, and now he knows that there's a Protect there. So definitely a lot of information going James's way that he can use different ways with his 2 Water-type Pokemon to knock it out, and then also has to play around that Protect a little bit. One thing that I did want to talk about real quick is that the previous turn we did see that Gothitelle switch in and then switch right back out. So by coming in for just that one turn, he made it so that neither of the 2 Pokemon on Vincent's side of the field could switch out for that turn, even though Gothitelle was leaving the field.
Tapu Fini switching in here onto that Incineroar slot. So if Ludicolo went for a Scald, Tapu Fini is going to take that graciously since it resists water. Mawile switching out into Gothitelle again. So Shadow Tag on the field. Vincent will not be able to to switch out his Tapu Fini or Ferrothorn. Scald did go into Tapu Fini, so Vincent made a great call. Power Whip connects on Ludicolo and knocks it out.
Right, and this is pretty much what we see on the field here. What Vincent would is probably qualify as his anti-rain mode, right? He's got Tapu Fini, which loves to be sitting in the rain, especially now that Ludicolo is there, and Ferrothorn, which has its 4 times weakness taken away by the rain and can start dishing out damage to James's side of the field. But Mawile is going to come back in here, intimidate that Ferrothorn, and we're kind of at a little bit of an impasse here. We've got 4 pretty bulky Pokemon on the field. There probably aren't going to be too many knockouts happening unless Tapu Fini starts doing massive damage with rain-boosted water attacks.
And let's see how many of them are holding recovery berries.
That's true.
With all of this bulk. So Mawile is going to Mega Evolve here, and if Tapu Fini did not Protect, a potential Iron Head could be coming its way. Muddy Water connects on both of James' Pokemon.
That's going to hurt Mawile.
And is it going to get an accuracy drop? No, it doesn't. But Play Rough misses anyway without the accuracy drop, since it's only 90% accurate. Psychic does only a little bit of damage to Tapu Fini, and Ferrothorn sitting there saying, hey, if I have to stick on the field with Ferrothorn, I might as well Leech Seed Gothitelle and try to force it to switch out.
Right, and James there, we saw that Play Rough go wide of Tapu Fini. He was probably, definitely was going for the double target onto the Tapu Fini so that he could take a knockout on it. But this Ferrothorn, given a free turn to just set up a Leech Seed, unless James has something like Fire Fang or Brick Break or one of those like niche techs on his Mawile, is going to have a tough time dealing with it.
Muddy Water connecting on both again. No accuracy drop, but Play Rough misses twice now.
Heal Pulse.
Gothitelle, Heal Pulse will recover some of more than half of Mawile's HP, but Ferrothorn is able to now leech seed Mawile as well, and he will be taking a lot of HP recovery every turn as the rain stopped. So I knew eventually the rain was going to go down here, but Ferrothorn, he can just sit here all day. He's really not afraid of either of James' Pokemon.
Right, and there's recovery, a lot of recovery going on both sides of the field as that berry is activated on Gothitelle. We saw the leftovers activate for Tapu Fini, so it's getting recovery. Ferrothorn's got 2 Leech Seeds active, it's getting recovery. Mawile has a friend that's heal pulsing it, it's getting recovery. And of course, Gothitelle's eating its berry. So like I mentioned, these two players are at a little bit of an impasse here. And of course, the 2 play rough misses were a pretty big contribution to that. But James looking at his position on the field and realizing that he has absolutely nothing to do with the Ferrothorn at the time. His kind of like way to deal around it probably would have been something like, heal pulsing repeatedly, and just trying to
4-3 though. Like that's where
we don't see it too much, but James
that's where I'm confused.
Is an incredibly intelligent and experienced player. He knows when he's staring down a Ferrothorn and has nothing to do with it.
Okay, but hear me out. Muddy Water, I know it hit 4 times, not the most accurate move. Eventually, Play Rough is going to land.
Right,
it can't miss every time.
But Play Rough is not going to do damage to Ferrothorn, which is being the big thing. So I think what we can assume from that forfeit there was that we don't have a Mawile that's running a Brick Break, which is something that it could have used to deal with Ferrothorn, or a Fire Fang, which are kind of the 2 moves. Mawile's been running a lot of different moves earlier in the season.
And
I think
Politoed was his last Pokemon, which really can't do anything to Ferrothorn either.
Right. So I think here in Game 2, James is definitely going to bring Incineroar. He has to have a way to deal with that Ferrothorn somewhere in the 4 Pokemon that he brings, or otherwise it's just going to be like Game 1, and he's just going to have nothing to do to it.
Yeah, there's really no other option. Incineroar has to be one of his 4 Pokemon in this matchup. It was also curious, James had a great turn 1 when he switched out Politoed into Gothitelle, but then he immediately switched it out and lost that Shadow Tag that was really hurting, or what could have made Vincent have to think differently because he wouldn't have been able to switch, but he was able to switch around after it went out. The Mawile, sure it had an Intimidate, but it really wasn't doing too much on that switch-in. So I think if he has Ludicolo and Gothitelle on the field again, he now knows Incineroar is not Assault Vest. He doesn't have to use his Hydro Vortex on it to get the knockout while in the rain. That James has that extra information. But for Game 2, Vincent is going to lead Landorus Ferrothorn as James has Gothitelle Ludicolo. So skipping the whole Politoed turn, just going straight into Gothitelle Ludi.
Yep, and Vincent skipping the Incineroar Landorus lead and going right into his Ferrothorn, knowing that that's his way of stonewalling that rain mode. The Landorus is in a pretty good position to U-turn onto either one of these Pokemon if it gets the chance.
Fake out from Ludicolo onto Landorus, won't get the U-turn. Power Whip, bringing Ludicolo down really low, and Gothitelle sets up Trick Room.
Oh, that's scary.
So I'd probably bet James did not bring Politoed in this game since he just set up Trick Room, and Ludicolo on its own without rain is not the fastest Pokemon, so that might actually help. But Ferrothorn is now faster and can knock out Ludicolo with a Power Whip.
Yeah, James is really playing with fire here. He's got to have some sort of a game plan that involves, dealing with kind of the partners for Ferrothorn and then going after the Ferrothorn later in the game, because he just set up a Trick Room for the slowest Pokemon on the field and doesn't have a ton of good ways to deal with it. But he is going to get his Intimidate in here.
Here comes Mawile. That Intimidate will hinder both of Vincent's Pokemon's attacks, since they're both physical attackers. Gyro Ball at -1 into a resisted Mawile does not even 30% there. The Psychic onto Landorus brings it down to just above 50% HP. U-turn, super effective on Gothitelle. Not really going for the damage there. Landorus was really just trying to get out of the field on this turn, because that's really his only way to switch while Gothitelle's there.
Right, absolutely. And a good Gyro Ball there, catching the Mawile, switching with a neutral attack from Steel onto Mawile, as opposed to a Grass attack, which was, would have been conventionally used if you were just trying to knock out that Ludicolo. But he does pretty good damage to Mawile. And one of the things that I talked about in Game 1 of Justin's game earlier in Round 1 is that Mawile is very difficult to switch around when it's not in its Mega form. And we saw how much it took from a Gyro Ball there at -1, and that's one of the things I think that's holding it back. It's incredibly powerful once you get it on the field, but it's tricky to get onto the field.
Right, definitely. But at least right now there is no rain, So Vincent's Incineroar would have a full-powered Flare Blitz, but
There it is.
if he goes into that Flare Blitz hits Incineroar, that's going to be resisted. Gothitelle protecting an Incineroar fake out into the opposing Incineroar. So really nothing happening this turn.
Yeah, nothing really of substance happening other than we see that both players do have their Incineroars. James, like we talked about in between games, did bring his Incineroar because he knows that he needs that to handle Ferrothorn. But Ferrothorn still is slower than Incineroar, so there are ways that Vincent could use to kind of circumvent the fact that Incineroar is threatening Ferrothorn very heavily.
Ferrothorn protecting, expecting a Flare Blitz to come his way. Gothitelle Heal Pulse onto Incineroar, which hardly had any damage on it, but it will recover all the way to full HP. And a low kick, James calling the protect, low kick onto Vincent's Incineroar. Does just about
it's a malicious moonsault.
So, Incineroar is based off of wrestlers, so he's pulling out his heel move right now, going off of the top ropes eventually with malicious moonsault. That Gothitelle never had a chance.
Yeah, so see, this is a signature Z move I can watch. I don't need any more Let's Snuggle Forever. let's watch Incineroar just like suplex psychic types for the rest of the day. How about that?
Somebody get the medical team because that Gothitelle is done, all right? Tell Vince McMahon.
Gothitelle just got the chair.
That was so James actually had a good turn at the beginning by not attacking the Ferrothorn, but it's just turned. You don't really see Z moves a lot from Incineroar early on in this format. Mawile gets another Intimidate off here, but I'm pretty sure James wasn't expecting the Assault Vest, or expected it to be Assault Vest game 1, and then game 2 wasn't expecting for Incineroar Z.
Right, yep. And he definitely wasn't expecting that, and that's another way that Vincent is going to be able to steal a knockout there and definitely hinder James's game plan. With a team that James has, especially when he's brought this kind of like bulky, slower mode, it's very important that he has all of his Pokemon available so that he can constantly be switching around and have options to like lock the opposing player in with what he wants them to be locked in with.
Landorus switching in with that Intimidate, so now James is... Mawile is -1. It still does have that sky-high attack because of Mawile's huge power ability, but it is not as strong as it could be. Incineroar protecting again. Mawile play rough into Landorus. Is it enough for a knockout? It is. So Landorus goes down. Vincent not able to get any damage off on this turn. Flare Blitz goes into the Incineroar protect.
Yeah, and Vincent was definitely expecting there to get double targeted into his Incineroar, and James definitely capitalized on what, you know, the more conventional play to be expected was there. But now Vincent does have the opportunity to get his Tapu Fini back onto the field, which finds itself in a very good position and is pretty free to just start clicking Muddy Water here.
And also Tapu Fini being his 4th Pokemon, as we know, Ferrothorn is the other one.
Yep.
That means both games he hasn't brought Mega Gardevoir.
Right.
So he understands that he really doesn't need it in this matchup, especially since it's threatened by Mawile. And Tapu Fini can sit here in Muddy Water for as long as Vincent wants. Incineroar, knowing that, switches into Ludicolo, and he's just essentially going to sack off the Ludicolo if he gets hit by Muddy Water, which it looks like it did.
It might take the Muddy Water. Yeah,
oh, wow,
pretty well. Yeah.
It is times 4 resisted.
And
it was just so low, and it's not high, Assault Vest that I was thinking that maybe it had a chance, but it doesn't. But Flare Blitz on Mawile, that will knock out the Mawile.
And the Incineroar is quicker there. I believe that Incineroar and Mawile have identical speeds, so it looks like Vincent either was successful in winning a speed tie, or he has a little bit of training into his Incineroar speed so that he can outspeed maybe other Incineroar, or in this case, the Mawile.
So now James has access to faking out one of Vincent's Pokemon here, but he really doesn't have an answer in Ludicolo or Incineroar to Tapu Fini. And remember, there is the Ferrothorn in the back. So if he goes for a fake out and Ferrothorn switches in, that would be it would activate the Iron Barbs.
Yeah,
and
I don't
HP.
think even you know, taking away the fact that he could be faking out into an Iron Barbs, he has to go on the offensive here and get damage on Tapu Fini because he's got no other way to deal with it.
Ferrothorn does switch into Incineroar slot, so did James make the call and Flare Blitz into Ferrothorn as Tapu Fini had a pretty predictable protect on this turn. Incineroar fake out onto Ferrothorn, which is what we were just talking about. Critical hit, doesn't matter. The crit doesn't matter. He's still going to take the same amount of recoil from there. Giga Drain. This is without what we learned really is without the rain in this matchup, Ludicolo is not as powerful of a threat as it usually is.
Right, and for James to be able to claw back into this game, what he desperately needs is for his Ludicolo to be faster than Tapu Fini. And Tapu Fini is naturally faster than Ludicolo most of the time, so James would have had to have some speed investment into that Ludicolo to be moving first, and it does, luckily for him.
Giga Drain will recover some of its HP. Tapu Fini gets to at 50% HP, so another Giga Drain could be enough for a 2-hit knockout. Moonblast onto Ludicolo is not enough for a knockout. Ludicolo's special attack drops, which is actually huge because Giga Drain hardly did 50% HP last time. Now, thanks to the leftovers recovery, a -1 Giga Drain, barring critical hit, is not going to be enough to knock out Tapu Fini.
Right, and now Vincent's Incineroar can just knock out Ludicolo with Fake Out, and there's nothing that James can do to stop that. His other two Pokemon have been knocked out already. He's got nothing he can switch in to take that, and I think this is just going to be Vincent's game to take here. There's no way that he can knock out a Tapu Fini with just an Incineroar, especially one that only has low kick.
Vincent's Incineroar fake-outing Ludicolo, saying, see you later. Moonblast into Incineroar. It is a neutral hit. Doesn't do a lot. It lowers the special attack, which doesn't matter. But Tapu Fini doesn't have a lot of offensive pressure here since it's that leftovers variant of it. Maybe it has Calm Mind. Maybe there are ways to get its attack up. But at this point, Tapu Fini can just go for Muddy Water instead of play rough.
Right, it can go for Muddy Water. And really what James is looking at here is he has to be able to knock out a Tapu Fini with a Flare Blitz, which is kind of a tall order. And Vincent knows this, so he's going to protect his Tapu Fini for a turn and take the turn to get off a Darkest Lariat, which of course he has to use the Malicious Moonsault and get some free damage onto that Incineroar.
There is a lot of questions between players on Incineroar's Dark-type move. Do you want it to be Knockoff or Darkest Lariat? Since Darkest Lariat is Incineroar's move, Knockoff, but Knockoff has the benefits of knocking off berries and other items, but Knockoff doesn't work against Z-moves and Megas, so Darkest Lariat can consistently do more damage depending on who you attack, so that is interesting. At this point, it looks like Darkest Lariat is winning in that knockoff matchup right now, just as Vincent wins here in round 5. He is 5-0. He beats James, an internationally known player. The Incineroar was the MVP. There's really nothing else you can say.
Yeah, Incineroar definitely did a lot of work. The MVP probably for both players, if you had to give one to James there. But really that combination of Tapu Fini plus the Ferrothorn is incredibly difficult for a team like James's to break. And, a lot of times when you build a team, you and I have been playing recently, that you put together a team and it's going to have weaknesses, right? It's going to have weaknesses. And you try and just construct it in a way that maybe you have a way to deal with the weaknesses, even if it's a little bit of a fringe way. And James's way of dealing with that combination was being able to do enough damage with Ludicolo onto Tapu Fini and being able to get into a position to Flare Blitz that Ferrothorn, which otherwise would just completely wall his team, and he wasn't able to do that. So he knows in his head, I'm sure when he saw at team preview, this is a weak matchup for me. I have to play really well, I have to make reads, I have to position well, and he was just unable to do that because of how well Vincent played the matchup.
And also remember, in game 1, his Mawile missed 2 consecutive play roughs onto the Tapu Fini. It was a difficult matchup from the start, and then actually through the gameplay, switching out the Gothitelle in game 1 was questionable, but not bringing Politoed and going Trick Room in game 2 was interesting. It was cool. It was different, but I'm not sure if it really helped him out too much in that matchup.
And just in the end, it was just a really, really hard matchup for him. So congratulations to Vincent. He's going to be moving on to 5-0 here, I believe, which, as we talked about, is a pretty good place to be sitting if you want to get into Top Cut, barring, I think the word I used was Resistance Catastrophe. So he's doing well for himself. If he wins next round, he'll be good to go and on to Top Cut.
So we're going to be right back with an interview with Vincent because I need to know what's going on with that Incineroar. So stay tuned here on Liberty Garden. Welcome back. We are here with Round 5 winner Vincent Montalvo. Congratulations. That was a lot of fun to watch.
Thank you very much.
So what was going on in your head in that matchup against James, who is a prominent player?
Absolutely. So looking at his team, I know he could lead in two ways. He could either go the Gothitelle, Paris Trap mode, or he could go with the Rain mode. So it was kind of like just a guessing game of what was he going to lead with, and then how to adapt to whatever he leads with.
So I need to know about Incineroar. He was awesome.
Yeah.
I know when I'm practicing on Battle Spot, and a lot of my friends I talk to, the overarching opinion is that Assault Vest Incineroar is really good because of all the water types.
Right.
So with rain and Tapu Fini and stuff, you can handle
For
special
sure.
defense, increasing it. But you actually have Protect, and you have Insinium Z, so
Right.
you use Darkest Lariat,
Yes.
and you're more offensive instead of supportive Incineroar. So what was your decision behind that, bringing Incineroar today?
So I definitely agree that, Assault Vest is probably the best item you can use on it. But for my team, I kind of wanted to go with a little more raw offense. So I can just, fake out, Trick Room, and then Darkest Lariat.
Right, and your team, there are some, you might be a little bit weak to bulky psychics like Cresselia and Gothitelle, so that Darkest Lariat really helps.
Yeah, it's basically
there.
a check for Cresselias and any Psychic Trick Room setter.
And I saw on in Game 1 on Turn 1, when James went for the Hydro Vortex onto your Incineroar, you protected that turn.
Yes.
So in most of your matchups today, since Assault Vest is very common on Incineroar, do your opponents really just not expect the Insinium Z?
Yeah, unless I use it, they have no idea that I have it, so they're just assuming that it doesn't have Protect, that it's probably going to, auto lose to Hydro Vortex, stuff like that. But yeah, it is a little bit of a surprise, but
What else is working with your team so far? I mean, you're 5-0. The Ferrothorn is really good. You had excellent switch-ins where you switched in on the fake-out. You weren't getting hit by Flare Blitz or anything. So what's been working with your team so far today?
So for sure, I definitely have to conserve the Ferrothorn because obviously that thing can win games just by itself by leech seeding the opponent and stuff like that. And then really just taking advantage of the fact that Mega Gardevoir can Trick Room and then do some chip damage along with the the Incineroar or Ferrothorn paired up with it.
Yeah, and you had double leech seed to let up, so just your Ferrothorn play was really strong in this set. Game 2, James, his first turn, he had the Ludicolo, Gothitelle, and he set up Trick Room. So in my head, I already thought, like, okay, he's not bringing Politoed because he doesn't want to set up Rain. So what went through your head when you saw he set up Gothitelle set up Trick Room with Ludicolo on the field?
So me personally, I'm very comfortable with that type of lead because I already have a couple of slow mons plus the Incineroar, so it didn't really, looking at that, I thought, all right, I think I should be pretty comfortable with that lead. I don't have to worry about too much about it. I can't really think too much. It's kind of a blur right now.
Okay. I mean, you're excited. You're 5-0, man. So it's not definitely 100% secured, but at 5-0 with 2 rounds left, there's a very strong chance of you getting into Top Cut. So how does that feel?
It definitely feels good because this is one of the hardest places to do really well. So it's definitely, an honor to be able to stand amongst, the upper tier players here, definitely going to continue to do my best throughout this tournament, and hopefully I'll top cut.
Absolutely. I mean, you've definitely proven to yourself that you can go toe-to-toe with our top players here in our region. Tell us about yourself, your background, how long you've been playing, your accomplishments, what you like about Pokemon, what you like about VGC.
Yeah, sure.
Let our audience fill you in because, we know James Bacon, other players more than you, so let us know more.
Yeah, I've kind of been a bit of a lurker these couple of years. I've been playing since 2014, and really haven't had any significant success other than the Lancaster Regional back in 2015. I don't even remember how I discovered VGC. I think I was just off the internet. I think I might have accidentally discovered Nugget Bridge back in the day, and it was over after that. Once I discovered what VGC was all about, I just love the doubles formats. There's a lot of prediction. There's a lot of combos that work. I think it's really exciting to play.
That's great, and that's great for people at home knowing if you're just getting into VGC or just learning about it, you can do well, you can team build, you can meet friends at local events like this and make your way up into, being a top level player. I can't not mention the tomato on the table.
Yes, of course.
So what, are you just a big tomato fan? What's going on?
So earlier today, Aston Cox gave this to me, and he said, just just have it. It's for you. And kind of like how Aston, won that Brazil International with the pineapple.
Yeah.
He's kind of doing the same thing with me, kinda like passing the torch kind of a deal. Either that or he secretly wants to create a fruit salad. I don't really know.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I feel like this is so. If you win today, that means you have to like give somebody a different, a
Yes,
different
I have to
food
pick
item.
a fruit, and
yeah.
we'll keep making, adding new ingredients to the fruit salad.
You'd be like, dear Brendan Zhang, here's an apple.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Congratulations on your win, 5-0. You got a great chance. We hope to see you
Hopefully.
in Top Cut, and keep on, everyone. This is your proof right here
Thank
that
you.
you can go from lurker into player into top level competitor. So we'll be right back with round 6 coverage as round 5 is wrapping up here. We'll see you on the other side on Liberty Garden.